Welcome to Wi-Fi Hacking V3 from Hackers Rise. As you know, I'm OTW, and okay, David says, but your sound is horrible. Well, I'm sorry about that. Let's see, I wonder what we can do about that. Hang on one sec and see if I can change it. Okay, so this is Wi-Fi Hacking V3 from Hackers Rise again. We've had two previous versions of Wi-Fi hacking, and this is a new and improved course. We're going to add some additional tools, some additional content to give you a broader perspective on Wi-Fi hacking. And so with that having been said, let's get started. Okay, so what we're going to do first, here's kind of the outline of the course. And what I'd like to do today is to take a significant amount of time and focus today's class on the basics. It's kind of an introduction to Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi hacking. So we'll be covering the introduction, Wi-Fi basics, Wi-Fi frames, and Wi-Fi scanner. And then we'll leave some of these attacks to tomorrow's class. And then we'll look at these other attacks and other tools in Thursday's class. So classes will run probably somewhere around 3 hours or so, maybe 4, depending on how long it takes. So by your time, we should be done by 6 p.m. UTC, 7 p.m. max UTC each day. So it'll be about a 3-hour to 4-hour class each day. All right. So today is going to be focused primarily on the basics of Wi-Fi. So everybody has a basic understanding of Wi-Fi. By the way, let's go. I'm going to skip out of here, and I'm going to go to my Kali, and here's my Kali, and we're going to open up a terminal. All right, and you can't hear me now. You can't hear me. Okay. Let me check my audio. Now it's fine. Okay, there might be a little bit of lag there, David. And look, it might be on your end, because I usually, if there's problems on the network connection, I get a GoToMeeting gives me a indication that says that there's a problem, and I'm not getting any. I'm getting a good, strong connection. All right. So anyways, we're on Kali. This is Kali 2020. You can basically run whatever Kali you want. I'm using Oracle's VirtualBox. Okay. I'm also using an alpha adapter, a USB external alpha adapter. One of the things that people who are new to Wi-Fi hacking don't recognize is that the Wi-Fi adapter that's built into your laptop or into your desktop, whatever it happens to be, generally is inadequate for doing Wi-Fi hacking. Okay, so to do this well, you're going to need to go out and buy what's called an Aircrack compatible Wi-Fi adapter. If you go to aircrack.com, you'll see that they have a list there, and mostly it's by the chipset. What I would recommend is simply go and purchase an alpha-based. The Alpha is the brand, and they all work really well with, you got an Alpha. Good, David. That's what I'll be using as well, as an Alpha. If you're using an external adapter, you want to go Devices, and go USB, and then click on the external adapter, and make sure that it's connected to your virtual machine. If you're using a physical machine, there's no problem then. If you're using a virtual machine, you're going to need to use an external adapter, in part because the Wi-Fi adapter on your laptop or machine is piped into your virtual machine as ETH0, okay, as an Ethernet connection. So even if you have a Wi-Fi adapter on your physical machine, okay, that's capable of doing Wi-Fi hacking, you're still going to need an external adapter in using a virtual machine. So let's start off by simply going sudo ifconfig and give Kali its, and you can see that I have, this is actually a Wi-Fi connection that's then piped through my virtual machine as ETH0. I have a second Ethernet adapter as well. I have my loopback adapter, and then you can see I have my WLAN 0. If you're not using a Debian-based Linux, you might have a different name. And even if you are using a Debian-based, you might see WLAN 1, WLAN 2, WLAN 3 for your external adapter. Okay, generally it's going to come up as WLAN 0. All right, so if you have all of that, you're in good shape for this class. All right. Let's go back to our presentation then. So this is what I'll be using. All right, I have almost identical to this one right here. You can use many others. There's a lot of them on there. If you go to aircrack.com, I'll pull it up on the screen for you. Give me a second here. Yeah, I gotta spell it right to get it. I don't know why I always spell aircrack incorrectly. All right, I'm going to put this up on the screen for you. This is Aircrack NG. And Aircrack NG is the software for doing Wi-Fi cracking. You know, there's a lot of other tools, and we'll use some of them in class. But basically, what these guys have done is built the command line based cracking tools. They've been around for quite a while, and almost no matter what tool you're using, it's usually got Aircrack NG underneath it. All right, so like in class, we'll be using Wi-Fight, for instance, and Wi-Fi uses Aircrack underneath its GUI. There's other attacks like the PMKID attack that do not use Aircrack, but that's more unusual. That's a whole different type of attack. Also notice on this web page, you should see compatibility right here, okay? And if you're seeing if your adapter, okay, will work, you can go here, and it's a little easier to understand than it used to be, okay? So there are two manufacturers involved with wireless cards. The first is the brand of the card itself. Examples of card manufacturers are Netgear, Ubiquiti, Linksys, Intel, D-Link. There are many, many manufacturers beyond the examples we give. Okay. The second manufacturer is the chipset, such as Raylink, Atheros, Qualcomm. All right. So they use as an example here the Alpha AWS, and this is what I'll be using here. Okay, AWS 036AC. It tells you how to figure out, okay, whether or not your card's going to work. If you go ahead and just get the Alpha, you know it's going to work. All right, so I've been using them for years. I find them to be. I've tried many others. Some of them work better than others. The beauty of the Alpha is it's relatively inexpensive and it works. All right. So there's others out there. You can get it without this is with the high gain antenna. There's other even better antennas than this, but this antenna works pretty well in terms of picking up a lot of the weaker signals around you. We talk a little bit about antennas. You know, it's possible that you can have a number of different types of high gain antennas that can pick up signals from vast distances. Okay, but usually they have to be pointed at the Wi-Fi AP. And this is kind of a unidirectional. Okay, let's talk about some terminology before we go further. All right, the AP. You'll hear me talk about AP. The AP is the access point, or the place where the clients connect to the Wi-Fi and get internet access. Okay, you're probably using one right now in your home, in your office. All right. We'll often talk about PSK, the pre-shared key. This is the password used to authenticate to the AP. All right. Now, the reason it's not referred to as a password is that it's a password that everybody uses, okay, who connects it. There's not separate passwords for each individual. That's one of the weaknesses of the pre-shared key system, is everybody uses the same key. Now, we don't do that on our computers, right? If you're connecting to your network server, everybody uses a different password. Unfortunately, in most Wi-Fi systems, or maybe fortunately, people all use the same key. Unfortunate for their security, fortunate for those who are trying to hack it. All right. Then the SSID, that's a name used to identify the AP. Okay. So whatever yours happens to be, you know, your name, Netgear, Linksys, that's the SSID. All right. The eSSID is the extended service set identifier. Same as the SSID, but can be used on multiple APs in wireless LAN. So that, for instance, if I have multiple APs in my office or in my school, in my business, then I can give them all the same name, all right? And that would be the extended SSID. For our purposes, for hacking, the most important thing is the BSSID, the Basic Service Set Identifier. This is the unique identifier for every AP. It's the same as the MAC address of the AP. We know what a MAC address is, right? It's a globally unique network adapter identifier. All right. So when we're talking about the BSSID, we're talking about a globally unique identifier on that AP. SSIDs and eSSIDs are not globally unique. Anybody can name their AP any name they want, right? But the BSSID is globally unique. Channels, Wi-Fi operates on channels 1 through 14, but it's limited to 1 through 11 in the US. Now, depending upon what country you're in, yours may be different. Most of the APs, all of the APs and the Wi-Fi adapters in the US are limited to 1 through 11 by law, right? But it's in other countries, there's 12, 13, and 14 that are also available. This can be an important way of obscuring, say, a rogue access point. Okay, say in your country, say that you're limited to channels 1 through 11, right? And you set up your AP to operate on channel 13. Now, the administrators are not going to see that channel 13. And we'll talk more about when we get into rogue access points. More terminology, power. Okay, the closer you are to the AP, the stronger the signal. Okay, that makes sense, right? The signal in the US is limited to half a watt by the FCC. And it once again, depending on what country you're in, it may be more or less than this. Generally, it's going to be about a half a watt. Okay. Now, that's what the US limits, and your country may limit as well to half a watt. As a hacker, you're not limited to that. Okay, that may be an advantage that you can use against the system. So, for instance, if you were to turn this up to, say, 2 watts, all right, on your system, By increasing the power to 2 watts, you're going to be the strongest signal around. Your AP will be. Now, that can be really useful in, say, in an evil twin attack. An evil twin attack is where we have essentially we set up an AP with exactly the same SSID as a legitimate one and try to get people to connect to it. All right, and we'll set that up in class as well. Modes, this is important as we start off the class. Modes, Wi-Fi can operate in 3 modes: master, manage, and monitor. APs operate in master mode. Okay, wireless network interfaces operate in monitor mode by default, and hackers usually operate in monitor mode. Okay, this is actually a typo here. It should be in manage mode. Network interfaces operate in manage mode, and then hackers usually operate in monitor mode. If you're familiar with promiscuous mode, okay, promiscuous mode in your wired network, promiscuous mode means that you can see and listen in on all the traffic on the network. That's promiscuous mode. So normally your Wi-Fi adapter only will pick up the traffic that's intended for it. Okay, only for that IP, that MAC address. All right. But if you put your Wi-Fi adapter into promiscuous mode, then you can see all of the traffic going past you and sniff it and examine it. The same thing applies to Wi-Fi traffic as well. Wi-Fi, notice that there's Wi-Fi traffic going around us all the time, right? So sitting in your office, sitting in your classroom, sitting in your home, there's constantly this traffic going past you. Right? You can't see it, of course, but it's passing you all the time. If you put your card, your Wi-Fi card, into monitor mode, now you can see all of that traffic. Okay, you can see everybody's traffic passing you by. Now, it might be encrypted. Okay, it probably is encrypted, but you can still see it. All right. The range, okay, at the legal limit of a half a watt, and that's the legal limit. Most Wi-Fi APs are accessible up to 300 feet, or about 100 meters, but with a high gain antenna can be accessible up to 20 miles. So we've seen experiments done where with big parabolic antennas that we can actually pick up Wi-Fi signals up to 20 miles. But that's a very unusual case, right? Using a Yagi antenna, those are those directional antennas, we can expect to pick up signals from, a mile or 2. Okay, so that's what, about 3 kilometers. Okay, so anywhere from like 1 to 3 kilometers, 1 to 2 miles. Frequency, okay, Wi-Fi is designed to operate at 2.4 gigahertz. Most modern systems now use both, okay? So the original specification, the early systems, all worked at 2.4 gigahertz. 2.4 gigahertz works great. This was the original, okay? This is the initial security protocol to secure 802.11. 802.11 is basically the IEEE designation for Wi-Fi. IEEE is the body that goes ahead and sets up all the standards for radio transmissions. Okay, so it's called 802.11. You know that's the same thing as Wi-Fi. It was named WEP, or Wired Equivalent Privacy, by 2001. Hackers discovered that through statistical techniques, okay, that's important. Statistical techniques, they could crack the user's passwords in minutes due to improperly implemented RC4 encryption. Okay, if you know your encryption, RC4 is a streaming cipher. There's nothing wrong with RC4. It was the implementation of RC4 that was done improperly. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with RC4. The problems with WEP have nothing to do with RC4. RC4 still works. It's still used in a number of other areas like VoIP. because it's a streaming cipher. Most ciphers, okay, are block ciphers. So they take a block of data and encrypt it and send it along, okay? But RC4 takes every bit or byte and encrypts it and sends it along. That makes for smoother, like we're probably using RC4 right now for my voice, right? RC4, this is a VoIP transmission, a voice over IP transmission, and if I were using a block, it would be very choppy. It might be choppy anyways, right? But that's more has to do with the network connection, okay? But RC4, because it's encrypting every byte, therefore it gives you a transmission that is smoother and less choppy in voice communication. So that's what was being used initially. Nothing wrong with RC4. It was the way it was implemented. The IEEE had to quickly find a replacement as fast as all the Wi-Fi APs were left without security at that point. Few of these access points are still in use today. I still see occasionally one around. Okay, David says it's not choppy at all anymore. That's good. All right. So both our network connection and our RC4 are working well. So, anyways, so, this is 2001, what's that, 20 years ago now, right? So we first got wireless in the late 90s, 96, 97, it first started coming out. And almost immediately, it was determined that it was insecure, all right? So the IEEE had to come up with a patch, essentially, very quickly, okay? So in 2003, IEEE created a short-term fix that they called Wi-Fi protected access, okay? The key part of this new security protocol was that it did not require replacing the existing hardware. So that was one of the keys, is that they didn't want to have to replace everybody's hardware, because if they knew if they did that people wouldn't do it. They've already invested whatever they have, $100 or $50 into a Wi-Fi access point. If they created a new protocol that required that everybody replace their access points, it wasn't going to happen, right? And so what they did is that they tried to come up with a solution that made these systems more secure without having changed the hardware, right? And so what they did is they came up with basically a firmware update. And basically what it did is it also relied upon RC4, so it didn't change the encryption. Okay, but added some additional features, making the pre-shared key more difficult and time-consuming to crack. Okay, one of the limitations of the first APs is that they had chips in them that were relatively weak. All right, so we couldn't put in a stronger encryption algorithm, but we could put features into the encryption that made it more difficult to crack, more time-consuming. These features included making the IV, the initialization vector, longer from 48 to 128 bits. So over here in WEP, our initialization vector was only 48 bits. Very small, okay? So they increased it to 128 bits, okay? They ended up putting in the temporal key initialization protocol, which generates different keys for each client, okay? So basically each client is going to be slightly different. And it has a message integrity check to make certain the messages have not been altered en route. So basically it eliminates the possibility, or makes it more difficult to do a man-in-the-middle attack. Then we ended up with WPA2, which is what most people are using today. All right, the WPA2 802.11i standard was initialized in June of 2004. So it's been around now, some 17 years. WPA2 uses the counter mode with cipher block chaining message authentication protocol, which requires a more powerful integrated circuit, a chip, okay, commonly known as CCMP. This new protocol was based upon AES, okay. Now you should be familiar with AES. AES is the generally accepted strongest encryption that you can get, okay. For authentication and encryption, CCMP was more processor intensive. That's why we needed a new hardware with more powerful chips So most APs had to be replaced with more vigorous, okay, hardware. WPA2 supports both personal and enterprise modes. We'll be working on the personal side here today, not the enterprise. The enterprise side is a little more difficult to crack. Basically, it uses a back-end Radius server. So everybody has, like your computer system, when you log into your network server, everybody has a different password to log into WPA Enterprise. You can see right away the strength of that. Okay, everybody has a different password rather than everybody have the same password. And if one person knows the password, everybody knows the passwords. You know everybody's passwords. So when using the personal mode, the PSK, the pre-shared key password is combined with the SSID to create a pairwise master key. All right. So essentially, let's talk about this a little bit. The pre-shared key, right, is then combined with the SSID. So if the name of your SSID is Netgear, okay, then those two are going to be combined, the password and the name of the SSID, to create a master key. The reason for doing this is to basically defeat rainbow table attacks. Rainbow table attacks are where, as you know, are those attacks where you basically can take a hash and go and compare it to the hash on a rainbow table, and you find the match, and then you know the password, right? With the SSID being essentially salted into the password, then you would have to create a rainbow table for every SSID out there to create rainbow tables, which becomes a huge task. Okay, this is why when you buy an AP today, it comes with a unique SSID. So initially, you could create a rainbow table. So when Netgear created their APs, then it was possible to create a rainbow table with all the possible passwords or common passwords, and then salted with the word Netgear and create a rainbow table. Now, because the APs are all unique, right, then that makes the hacker's job more difficult. Not impossible, but more difficult. Okay, Sej has arrived. Yay! Welcome, Sej. We're just kind of going through some of the basics here. All right. So this salting makes it more difficult to come up with, to crack the passwords on these systems. This is why you should have a unique name to your AP. Otherwise, you're making it easier on attackers. All right. The client and the AP exchange messages using the PMK to create a pairwise transient key. This key is unique to each user and session and was designed to make sniffing of Wi-Fi traffic more difficult. And then in recent years, we have WPA3, which is still being implemented. Okay. Wi-Fi hacking tools. Well, AirCrack NG Suite is the key. It's built into many other tools. Nearly all the other tools are built around it. Okay. The first step, okay, to getting started in Wi-Fi hacking is to put your adapter into monitor mode. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. All right, let's go ahead and go back to our Kali. And let's go open up over here. You can see we have WLAN 0. All right. Also, I just want to show you a couple other commands that are useful working in Wi-Fi. So, for instance, of course, you can use the ifconfig, and you can see that lists all the interfaces. Specifically to Wi-Fi, we can use the iwconfig. And of course, it's going to come back and tell me, no, command not found because I didn't use sudo. All right, iwconfig. give it my password, and you see it shows me just the wireless. It shows me all of the adapters, but it says there's no wireless extensions here. Okay. And then I can also go IWList, sudo IWList, and you can see here's the help screen here. And this goes sudo IWList and WLAN 0, that'd be our interface. See, all of the commands requires the interface, all right? And then scanning. And then it'll go out and scan. You can see the data starting to come up. Okay, actually went through and got them all already. And it pulled data, key data, on all of the Wi-Fi access points in range. Okay, let's take a look at it here. Here's one. Here's the address right here. Tells me the channel, the frequency it's operating on channel 1, the quality, the signal level, the encryption. Tells me the ESSID is Mandela. Okay, it tells me it's in master mode. Okay, and some additional information. Tells me how long ago the last beacon was. Tells me it's WPA version 1. So using WPA2 version 1. Tells me all the specs on it. There's another one here that's called, it's on channel 6. Alright, it's also using 2.437 on channel 6. Signal level, quality, encryption, ESSID. It's important to point out here a couple things. Okay, one is that most Wi-Fi security managers are taught that they should turn off the SSID. Maybe even taught that. Okay, and that's a good practice to do that. Turn off the SSID. But for the hacker, that really doesn't make any difference because the hacker can still get your ESSID because it sends out a beacon every so often. All right, and that beacon is going to contain the ESSID. In addition, the hacker doesn't require the ESSID to hack it. All right, so what they need is this address right here. This is the MAC address, or what we talked about earlier as the BSSID. All right, so some basic commands to gather information about the Wi-Fi signals around you. All right. Then we can go sudo. Let's put our Wi-Fi adapter into monitor mode. Okay, let's go sudo airmon ng. All right, and then go the name of the adapter. All right, WLAN 0 and start. My bad. The start should come first before the adapters. Okay. And now it'll go through and put the adapter into monitor mode. Now it changes the name of the adapter when it does that. Let's read what it has to say. It says found two processes that could cause trouble. Kill them using the airmon check kill before putting the card in monitor mode. They will interfere by changing channels and sometimes putting the interface back into managed mode. Now, I've not had that problem, but let's do that anyways. All right, sudo, okay, airmon ng, and then it goes check kill. By the way, airmon, like almost all the tools we're going to be using here initially, are part of the AirCrack suite. So people talk about AirCrack. So for instance, if you go up here and look at wireless attacks, you'll see a number of these tools here. All right, there's AirCrack. But AirCrack is a suite of tools, okay? And these include AirMon, AirReplay, AirDump, AirCrack, Air. Yeah, there's a number of them. Matter of fact, let's take a look and see if we can find them all. Go locate, okay, Air, and then let's put a wildcard after it and see what we can find. Didn't find any. Why didn't I find any? You should find everything that begins with Air with a wildcard after it. Let's try another command. Let's try. Oh yeah, thank you, David. that'll. Let's try. Yeah, so it's actually looking for Air, and then. Yeah, thank you. Just use locate Air. Yeah, that'll work without the wildcard, because it'll look for that fragment. All right, locate. My system seems to have locked up here. Come on. Something is lagging here. Come on. Sometimes, there we go. Sometimes when I'm doing classes here, the GoToMeeting can use a lot of resources. Okay, locate Air. Oh my goodness, we got so many options there. Okay, let's go up and look above here. Yeah, here we go. So AirCrack, AirDecap, AirDecloak, AirLib. Okay. There's a bunch of other parts of the AirCrack suite there. Okay, so looks like somebody else has joined us here. Okay, we got James, good, and Sej, and David, good. All right, so when we left off, we were looking at our putting our adapter into monitor mode. Let's go back now and go sudo ifconfig. You can see that our adapter has changed names. Okay, it's now WLAN 0 mod. So now, whenever we're working with that adapter, we have to use that name. So let's go ahead and let's try using sudo, another one of the AirCrack tools. Okay, it's called AeroDump, and then WLAN 0 mod. Yours may be different. Okay, the key is to find out what is changing your name. This is typically what it's going to be. All right, if you're using Kali, you're using any of the Debians, it's going to be WLAN and then some number and then mod. If you're using, say, Ubuntu, it's going to be different. If you're using any of the other Ubuntu is Debian-based too, but it has a different naming system. Let's go ahead and try AirDump. AirDump, what it'll do is it'll go out and grab all the information of all the traffic that's going around us and put it up onto the screen. Remember we talked about putting your adapter into promiscuous mode. We've done that, and now we're going to go ahead and use that to see all the traffic around us. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And it'll start to collect. You can see it's scrolling through the channels, right? And up here, what we're seeing are all the APs. What we're seeing down below, okay, are the clients. All right, so if we wait a little bit, we'll see more information. All right, so you can see there's a number of APs nearby. Let's give it a little time as it collects all the information. So what I was saying earlier is that two of the most common practices that that security, hey, we've got a new one coming in, a new client coming in here, that security manager taught is to turn off the SSID and possibly use MAC filtering. Okay, use MAC filtering, and MAC filtering can be used to limit who can use the Wi-Fi AP, okay, by MAC. And remember that MAC is globally unique. So that sounds like a really good practice. I can say, okay, here's everybody in my office, and here's their MAC addresses. I will go ahead and put in a whitelist in my AP that says only these MAC addresses can connect to my AP. That's a good strategy, except that it's pretty easy for the hacker to be able to change the MAC address, okay, on their adapter to anyone that is already on the whitelist. And we can see the MAC addresses here of people who've connected, okay? So you can see, let's look at each of these, and I'll explain that further, all right? So here we have the BSSID, all right? That's the MAC address of every AP, all right? We got another one connected here, all right? So we got 4 clients, it looks like now. And you see that here we have 3C, right? This is the BSSID, 3C67. So we have these 2 clients, okay? This is the network adapters right here. That's the network adapters MAC address. So if somebody had put into place MAC address filtering, we can simply spoof this MAC address. We know that they are on the whitelist because they're connected. We can spoof that MAC address and connect to the AP. So yes, those 2 practices are good practices, but it's easy enough for somebody with some basic skills to be able to overcome them, all right? But it'll keep out the honest people. It won't keep out a good hacker. Let's go back to this information. MAC address of the AP, you can see all of them here, they're all globally unique. The power, the number of beacons. Now the beacons is a frame that is sent out as from the AP. And that beacon includes all the information you're seeing. Basically what we're doing is we're grabbing the beacon and getting information on the BSSID, the ESSID, and the security. So even if the SSID is turned off, the beacon still includes the SSID. Then we can see this one here, the number of data. This one looks like it's inactive, this one here. There's no data going across it. All right, and it's on channel 1, megabytes. The encryption is WPA, okay, CCMP, pre-shared key, and there's this ESSID named Mandela, okay. And then we see another one here. This one is more active, all right, and it looks like it's using WPA2, pre-shared key. And we can go through each of them here, and you can see there is one here that's WEP, okay. Now, in reality, you may see something different, but you're not going to see many WEPs anymore. This is one that I actually just have built in my lab. I've kept old Wi-Fi APs around. This is one that I've had around for a number of years, and it's still using WEP, and that's just for this course. If you were to go into like a big city and just do a scan like this, you would probably find a few WEPs for people who just haven't bought one in 15 years or so. But it's becoming rarer and rarer. It used to be that I would go downtown to a big city and might be able to see 25% of the APs having WEP. Not the case anymore. They're getting rarer and rarer. So this gives us all of the information that we need to hack these systems. All right. Here down below, we can see all of the clients. All right. These are the MAC addresses of the clients. And for instance, this one here, these two here, we're picking these up, but they're not associated with any, they haven't connected to any of the APs. This one here, for instance, has connected to right here, the Verizon. All right. This one here, okay, has connected to Magic Cabin, and the other one, that one just went away, and the other one had also, there we go. And we've got a couple other, these are associated with the LTE CPE. So once we put it into monitor mode, all of a sudden we've got a whole lot of information and everything really that we need to start hacking these APs. All right. Let's just sit and watch this for a little bit and you can see. Now I mentioned you can see more of them coming on, more clients coming on. If I go ahead and take my my Alpha Wi-Fi adapter and lift it up over my head, you will see, watch. Okay, it'll start picking up more and more. Yeah, so far it's picked up more clients, not more APs. I live in a pretty remote area, not many neighbors. When you're in a big city, you'll pick up maybe hundreds of these. I'd mentioned the possibility of how you could change your MAC address. All right. So if somebody has, for instance, MAC filtering in place, we could go ahead and change our MAC address to one of those MAC addresses that have already connected. All right, like the ones we see here. We know that these guys were on the whitelist, right? Because they've already connected. So how can we go ahead and do that? How can we go ahead and change our MAC address? Well, first thing we got to do is to take down our. I'm gonna run the commands. And first what we're going to do is go sudo, all right, and then we got to go ifconfig, and then wlan0 mod. Got to make that a 0 mod, and then down. All right. Now, if I do this, we're going to lose this connection. All right, and I'll show you. Let's go. It's okay. Go down. Go Cali. As long as I don't lose my connection to you guys. And as it should slowly see the screen begin to, all of the connections fade away. It should. Let's go and do a sudo ifconfig and see if it's down. Ifconfig. Looks like it didn't take it down. All right, let's try that again. IF is not going to work. Let's try IF down. Comes back as this unknown interface. Okay. Let's go sudo ifconfig. Doesn't want to take it down. Sudo ifconfig. We'll try different commands and see if we can get it to come down. Looks like things are frozen over here. It's frozen over here as well. Can you guys still hear me? We're not frozen? Yeah, okay, good. So we're not frozen. Just my virtual machine seems to be frozen right now. And it appears that my virtual machine has frozen. We'll go ahead and reboot it. Let's take a 10-minute break. I'll reboot it and we'll start. See if we can get this started over again. All right. So you're off for like 10 minutes. Okay, we're back, and my virtual machine crashed. Now we're going to go ahead and see if we can get it back to the same place it was. Okay, you can see that it's reverted to WLAN 0. All right, so we got to go ahead and go sudo sudo air mon ng, and then start WLAN 0, whatever the name of your adapter is. Okay, it's changed it to WLAN 0. So now we can just go sudo air mon ng to get the, I'm sorry, not the mon, we want the air dump. Air o dump ng and WLAN 0 mod. And let's see what we can get here. Not getting anything now. Let's close that down. Let's try again. Alright, let's go sudo, see if we can figure out what's going on. First of all, let's make sure that the device is connected. I'm pretty sure it was. We saw it right there. Okay, it's connected. Go sudo ifconfig. There's our WLAN mon. Let's go sudo air mon ng check kill. That's the thing we didn't do. It's trying to kill, we're trying to kill the processes that were potentially causing us problems. All right, and then go sudo air dump. This is O and not a 0. Air dump ng, then WLAN 0 mod. And now we're not getting any. Let's wait a second, see if it picks up anything. Right now we're not getting anything. Now, one of the things that I have found in using VirtualBox, and by the way, I find that VMware's workstation is more reliable. I use the Oracle VM VirtualBox just for classes. In my own work, I use VMware. I use it for classes because it's what most students are using. It's about $250 to get the VMware workstation. Obviously, Oracle VirtualBox is free. Now, one of the things that I've found, I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. The problems that I can get with in VirtualBox is in the settings and the USB. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and shut this down, and we had it working, right? It was working great, and that's not. Let's go to settings, and let's go to USB, and this is where I've run into problems. Okay, is notice I've enabled the USB controller. Okay, and I've got two adapters. Okay, that are in my USB 3. All right, so if it's not working for you, try this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to USB 2. Okay, and see if that'll make any difference. And then we'll go ahead and try again. Now, this is basically a virtual machine issue. It's not something you'll see. Welcome, folks, to the maiden voyage of Mr. Robot Hacks. All right, this is a course I've been wanting to do for quite a while. Mr. Robot ended about a year ago, a little less than a year ago. I've been wanting to do it since then, and so we're finally getting around to doing it. And the idea behind this class is to try to explain, in some cases replicate, the hacks of Mr. Robot. So those of you who may not have seen Mr. Robot, and I think there may be some of you here in class, all right? And anybody else who's watching this video, Mr. Robot was a TV show, okay, that started, I think, in 2015, 2014, 2015, right around there. And 2014, 2015, right around there. And one of the amazing things about it was that, well, a lot of amazing things about it, including Rami Malek, this speller right here, Elliot, okay? Rami Malek at the time was a relatively unknown actor who took on this role. And the role is of a asocial, kind of autistic, slightly autistic individual who is very, very bright, but really doesn't know how to interact with society very well. But he knows computers well, okay? And he is a information security engineer for a company, and he gets involved in the hack of the century, taking down the world's largest conglomerate. The beauty of the show for me, among other things, is that almost all of the hacks are realistic, okay? Almost all the hacks are realistic. I mean, most movies and most TV shows, hackers are depicted as, you know, they have on their screen these, you know, rotating discs and geometric shapes, and in a couple of seconds they're able to hack into the world's most powerful and most secure computers. In Mr. Robot, he uses real tools and real techniques. Okay, he's using tools that are available out there, open source tools. You can see it right on his screen. He does use Kali, as we'll be using here. You don't have to use Kali. Kali is just convenient. Kali just has many of the tools that we need built into it. And if it doesn't have it built into it, it's easy enough to install in Kali. Okay, and Kali is a Debian distribution, which I find to be the easiest to work with, particularly in an InfoSec environment. And so it's a fairly realistic. There are some gaps in realism here. You have to suspend belief in a couple of places, in a few places in the show. But generally what he does is realistic hacking. And to accomplish that, the producers of the show and Sam Esmail, who is the writer and creator of the show, had a number of hacking consultants on staff so that they made sure that everything was very realistic. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be trying to look at some of those. Okay, we'll see how many we can cover in 3 days of class. Right? We can probably cover a few of them. And some of them we may have to just cover at a very high level. Some of them will go into more depth. Also, I'll try to integrate some clips from the show into the class. So you if you haven't seen the show, you'll have some idea what we're talking about. For my part, over the last few days, I've watched season 1 and season 2 all over again. I think for maybe the 3rd or 4th time, and every time I watch it, I'm always more amazed. So I have a pretty good, fresh perspective on the show. I mean, over the last, I don't know, maybe 5 days, I've gone through, the 2 seasons. I've done a lot of TV watching in the last few days. So, but I've seen the show previously. I think I've probably seen almost all the episodes at least 2 or 3 times. So, but it was amazing going back and watching it again. How much more I picked up and how much it refreshed my memory for this class of some of the hacks and the context of the hacks. Okay, rather than simply showing you hacks, I'm going to try to give you the context within the story of why these hacks became critical. All right. So that having been said, as an introduction, I also, for those of you who are in class, and some of you are here for the very first time, the way class works is that we start at 3 p.m. UTC. For some of you who have gone into standard time from daylight savings time, you might have noticed that there's a change in the start time for you. Okay, UTC does not have a daylight savings time standard time, and almost every time we have a class after the clocks change, we end up with a few people showing up an hour late or an hour early, what have you, depending upon whether we're falling back or springing forward. So we may see a few people come in about 45 minutes or so. But you guys all were great. You all figured out the UTC and translated it into your local time. We'll start at 3 p.m. UTC. We'll run to approximately 9:30 UTC. We'll take a 15-minute break or bathroom, coffee, what have you. Okay, and then we'll come back and do another hour, hour and a half. In which case we'll break for a 1 hour meal break. What meal it is going to depend upon what time zone you're in, and we're stretched here all the way across North America, Europe, and into Turkey. I think as far as we do have one student coming in from India, hasn't arrived yet. But in any case, everybody's in different time zones, and so what meal you choose to take depends on what time zone you're in. So I don't call it a lunch break, I call it a meal break. We'll come back and we'll probably do an hour or 2 in the afternoon session. This is how you can plan your day, okay? We'll do an hour or 2 in the afternoon session and then do the whole thing all over again on Wednesday and on Thursday. And we'll try to cover some of the more interesting hacks and sometimes some of the more mundane hacks too, just because some people may have seen the show but didn't really quite understand how he did that. All right. So with that having been said, do we have any questions?